And I think if you take a step back, I think people just don't grasp the power of paid advertising. Now, Amazon basically said to her that they are struggling to find any agencies at the time that would take Amazon PPC seriously. And I was like, right, here is a potential opportunity. So I created a landing page. I said I'm an Amazon ad agency, and I ran some Google ads to it. At the time, Sreenath, it was costing me 50p a click. I then approached a number of the brands that we were working with that were e-commerce companies that we were doing their Google ads to kind of have a look at the Amazon. They thought we were gods because they never switched on ads, turned it on. At the time, it's just auto campaigns. And the return they were getting compared to what we were getting Google ads, it was just, for them, it was mind blowing. And I was like, right, there's something here. And then within a few months, we just decided, right, we're going to completely stop doing Google ads and we're going to focus all of our attention on Amazon ads.
Hello and welcome to episode of Intentwise Connect podcast. I'm the host, Sreenath Reddy, founder, CEO here at Intentwise. My goal with these conversations is to bring industry practitioners, really have them share from their experiences and learnings. And today I have one such guest, George Meressa. Did I say the last name right, George?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. He's the founder, CEO of Clear Ads, which is a full service agency based in UK. George, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
I don't know if I've said this before, but I love your studio setting, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
We'll learn all about Clear Ads in a moment, but George has been in the space since 2011. That's 13 years. That's over a decade of being in the advertising space. But we'll have a deep conversation about his background, his experiences, and his advice for all of us. So George, help us understand, what Clear Ads does, and I'll get into how you got into this business after that.
Yeah, sounds good. So we're in a full Amazon full kind of agency. So we deal with everything from paid ads to kind of strategic promotion strategy, inventory management, listing optimization, image optimization, etc. So we kind of do everything for brands that sell products on Amazon.
Got you. And do these tend to be global brands? Are you focused on certain markets?
Yeah, good question. Most of the brands that we work with are based in the US. So it's mostly US, then Germany, and then UK.
Got you. Okay. And let's get into how this whole thing started, right? So if you were to dial back, I saw here in your bio that you started this business back in 2011.
Yeah.
How did you get into this business? And then I know you started with Google, but now you're in the Amazon world. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, I think I always had a flair for turning going from nothing to something, right? And I love the idea of kind of just entrepreneurship. At university, one of my favorite modules was entrepreneurship. I studied business management, and I was fortunate enough to have a friend who had the Google Ads agency. And so when I was finishing off university, he said, "Hey, George, why don't you come and join my agency and help me build it?" So I was like, "Great." He put me in sales. Sreenath, I was awful. I was terrible. Like, I just hated it. And, at that point, I saw an account manager, right? And this was the dream for me. This dude called Nick walks in, he has these headphones and he would sit down, speak to no one until lunchtime, go out for lunch with us, and then go back to the office and just get deep into a project and work on it. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's the dream. So after a month, I plucked up the courage to ask Simon, is there any chance I can move from sales to account management? And then to my surprise, he said yes, because he said he laughed at a few people before when they asked, but he said yes to me. At that moment, Sreenath, I knew my life had changed, right? And I think if you take a step back, I think people just don't grasp the power of paid advertising, especially pay-per-click. I think we're spoiled, right? Because you're effectively presenting your ad not only with someone who is looking for your product, but at the split second that they're making that inquiry, you have the opportunity to present your ad.
Yeah.
Just game changing. And at the time, we were focusing more on service-based businesses with Google Ads, and I went into account management, and I loved it. I loved the fact that you can do tests, you could experiment, and then you could see the results of your work within hours, right? You can see the results. You can see that spike in clicks, impressions, conversions, sales, etc. So it was just, I mean, there's a drug. It's like a drug, right? So I was loving it, and I was working again like tirelessly, like with Simon's agency. And at that point, like I he got through a few account managers, and every time an account manager left, he's like, George, out of these accounts, who do you want? You know, and then at that point, I was there the longest out of all the account managers. It was really hard to keep him at the time, and so I got like all the biggest accounts and the most interested accounts. So I was able to do so much with it. And then in 2011, I decided, no, I'm going to set up my own, and I kind of stumbled across one or two brands that I started working with, and they kind of through word of mouth that kind of organically grew. So Google Ads is where I kind of started, and
Nice.
and it was going well for some years. And then a friend of mine who used to work with me then went and interviewed at Amazon. Now, Amazon basically said to her that they are struggling to find any agencies at the time that would take Amazon PPC seriously,
Interesting.
right?
Gotcha.
So I was so surprised when I heard that, and I was like, right, here is a potential opportunity. Now, at this point, Sreenath, I've tried Expedia ads, TikTok ads, TripAdvisor ads. I've tried
Yeah.
all of the, none of them work. But I was like, hey, you know what? Let me give this a go. So she told me that day, she's very like she always says, George, you need to do this right now. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen. I'm going to try it. So I created a landing page. I said I'm an Amazon ad agency, right? And I ran some Google ads to it, right? At a time, Sreenath, it was costing me 50p a click,
Wow.
right? And this is the way people approach me when they called me from an ad, or when I called them. This is how the conversation starts. I've been looking for someone like you for years. I didn't even know people like you existed. That's how it started. And all I had to say was, here I am. And they just signed up. So the first two, I was like, look, I've not done this before, but I've been working on a more seasoned platform, Google. I'm sure it's not different. I'll work on your account for free for 2 months. So I did that for the first two. And after a month, it was obvious. I was like, right, look, this is working. Let's do this. Then we had at the time when I saw, okay, this has legs,
Yeah.
right? I then approached a number of the brands that we were working with that were e-commerce companies that we were doing their Google ads to kind of have a look at the Amazon. They thought we were gods, right? Because they never switched on ads, turned it on, and at the time it's just auto campaigns. And the return they were getting compared to what we're getting Google ads, it was just, for them, it was mind blowing. And I was like, right, there's something here.
Yeah.
There is definitely something here. And then within a few months, we just decided, right, we're going to completely stop doing Google ads, and we're going to focus all of our attention on Amazon ads. And at that time, some people thought I was a bit mad, because by that point we were organically ranking really high for Google ad agency. And we just said, nope, it's just Amazon, and we're going to go focus on Amazon. And that kind of, the love of e-commerce grew at that point, because it was always there. But then with Google, it was more service-based. There were issues, like you had to work with the brands to ensure that the conversion tracking was put in place properly. And, depending on the type of web designers that you work with, that the company had, it could be a difference between the tracking being put in place properly very quickly, or it could take a few weeks. And if it took a few weeks, or even sometimes 1 or 2 months with some brands, you don't really know how the account's performing. You can only really give the brand information on clicks and impressions, and they don't care. They just want to see the results. So moving into Amazon, where Amazon owns the entire process, was just incredible.
No, yeah. I actually want to touch on a couple of things here. One is, first of all, the CPCs that you're talking about. We ran some Google ads with Amazon services, PPC services intent. And I think by the time we started doing, which was 2020, 2019, 2020, the CPCs were 10, 12, $15 a click. So I wish I was there when you started.
That's where I stopped.
Yeah, well, that's when you start. That's when you start the ads.
I mean, we got up to £20,000 a month of ad spend, and what happened? Yeah, the biggest issue at that point was the SaaS companies came in. So Coursefile, Psychometrics, and obviously they're making such high returns. They basically blazed through. And at the time, it was if you looked at impression share, it was Psychometrics, Quartile, and then Clear Ads. Right, we were number three. Like we were getting most of it, but then even with that budget, 20 grand a month, it's not even that crazy, right? Of a budget, and we were kind of toe and toe with them, and then eventually it was like, right, we're not getting number 10 anymore, so we had to kind of shut down.
We did that for a couple of years, and at one point we looked at this, and because for me, I did this for 10 years in my day job, right? So buying Google Ads, and that's like I drank that Kool-Aid for a while. Then it dawned on me that as a business, as a startup, you can't grow your way with paid media, right? You've got to have some core brand, and paid media is just an amplifier. So that dawned on me, and I turned off my Google Ads too. I want to go back to another point you're making. So, when you're describing the service you provide for brands, you're doing a number of things: inventory management, pricing, promos, content, perhaps ads. The articulate for me perhaps the 2 or 3 core differences in managing Google PPC versus Amazon PPC.
So what are the big differences? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, just fundamentally, how are they different?
I mean, okay, so there's one very big difference, right? And that one big difference is if you're looking at the platforms, Amazon takes a cut of the purchase.
Yeah.
Right? So it's within Amazon's interest for the sale to happen. Whereas with Google, it's not within their interest. So Google work on a metric called quality score, right? And with the quality score, they don't really, it doesn't have any, there's no weight put towards the conversion rate, because effectively, if that was the case, people can manipulate it, put a conversion tracking code on the homepage, and they could have 100% conversion rate for everyone who lands on the page, right? So that's the biggest difference. And this is the one thing brands need to be aware of, especially if you're moving from Google to Amazon, is your conversion rate is the most important factor to consider when you're managing your account.
And you're talking about Google, you're talking about on Amazon.
On Amazon, yep. Correct. So, and that's the one thing, if you're looking at Campaign Manager, conversion rate isn't made easily available. Now, if you go to the targeting tab, it's there and it's nice, but like if you're looking at kind of the overarching, and that's why tools like Intentwise, they give you that information on the top level. That's one metric you have to look at, because ultimately, and I like to break these things down, if you simplify it, right? If you got 5 products and one product has a higher ratio of people that click to buy, right?
Yeah.
Amazon's always going to favor that one product, right? There's some bias there. And what does the bias look like? 1, impression share, right? You're going to get more impression share for 1 on the search results page. 2, right? You're going to get a lower cost per click bid, right? It's within their interest to ensure that your ads served more often than others, right? And 3, there are a lot of things that Amazon does behind the scenes outside of just their console, right? They might put you through an email marketing blast of their own, right?
Yeah.
They might already have a segment. So if you can get the conversion rate right, there's going to be a massive ripple effect.
Yeah.
And that's
I think it's it's an important point, actually, which is, I mean, of course, you have to be focused on return on ad spend, but what you're saying is that kind of the core driver of all efficiency is going to be conversion rate. So that has to be perhaps top of the list in terms of priority as a brand.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the biggest differences I think between Google and Amazon. I think I would probably would want to leave it there for the listeners. I wouldn't want to kind of put anything else in there because that is ultimately the biggest component that
Yeah.
should be really, really like thought about, especially for those going from Google into Amazon.
How do you think about growth? Like, how are you thinking about go to market as a business? Um,
I mean, it's a good question. I think in terms of growth, what I want to grow in is knowledge.
mm,
I don't really want to grow in terms of people and team. Ultimately, what I've noticed is, with these things, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2.
mm,
W There are certain people, when you bring them on, the amount of value that they can bring to their business is tenfold compared to others, and it's about being ahead of the curve here, right?
mm.
And being innovative enough to pivot with all of the ongoing changes that's happening at Amazon. I don't think people understand how fast this world is moving right now compared to any other industry.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything that's moving at this pace.
Yeah. And on that note, 2025, I remember wishing Happy New Year to everybody like yesterday, and we are in the middle of Q1 already. But what are you foreseeing as innovations that you will focus on this year? Any big things that you are intending to place some bets on as far as Amazon is concerned?
I mean, the big thing now is, and this is me speaking to the agencies. If you're not leveraging tools right now, you've fallen behind.
Yeah.
You have fallen behind. Like that is the first thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's been on our roadmap this at the start of the year. Um, we want to move away from clicking. We want to move away from basic adjustments on bids. Should not be doing that. There's a bunch of rules out there that do bidding, and Intentwise is one of them. Like, I mean, there was a call I was on, Sreenath, about 5 months ago, 6 months ago, and the people on the call were talking about, like most of the agencies on there were talking about how they're doing things manually,
Mm.
right? And I was so surprised because what 5 people can do manually, one person can do well with a tool. So when you're thinking about efficiency, I think that's the foundation right now. Like you have to move away from just manually doing stuff, right?
Yeah.
In terms of 2020, that's the first thing. The second thing is the integration of AMC. Like,
Yeah.
um, I think there's a plethora of data that Amazon's now providing us,
Yeah.
which no one else is able to. It's not that they're not allowed; they're not able to do it. The
Yeah.
richness of Amazon's data, no one can compare it to it. The buying behavior data that they have available is just the richest in the world, right? We have
Yeah.
access to that, right?
Yeah.
DSP has allowed us to leverage that, and now we're getting reporting. Last year we had the reporting, right? This year, Amazon are simplifying it and integrating it into the ad platform,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
I could see that they've been proactive enough with a number of partners, right? To even to provide this information through the API with ease,
Yeah.
right? So I've read this really incredible article, Sreenath, from someone at Google, right? And they basically said that the traditional marketing funnel
Mm.
where you got awareness, consideration, that's now dead. Like that's
Mm.
outdated,
See.
right? And actually, someone's buying behavior now is all over the place, right? They might make a search, look at your product, come off your product, go on Instagram, see who else has bought it, then go on YouTube, watch a tutorial on how to make view the product, and then come back and then buy,
Yeah.
right? So the journey of the customer is now so unique, customer
Yeah.
to customer, let alone product to product,
Yeah.
right? And what AMC gives you is the ability to understand your customer avatar, or at least certain patterns,
Yeah.
for you to then allow you to react.
Yep.
So,
Makes sense.
yeah, so there's a lot going there in terms of understanding the behavior, and I think we're really keeping a very close eye on brand on tools that are working with AI to see what they come up with
Yeah.
and how they innovate in the space. That's something else that we're looking at this year. But I think the biggest thing, I mean, we were quite late into this, but going into the full service side, and we went into it early last year, and we brought in a few experienced kind of e-commerce brand owners to help with this. And that's been a game changer. Taking if someone's spending thousands a month on ads, right? Sacrificing a proportion of that budget for a single month,
Yeah.
optimizing your images and your listing, and having a professional look at it can have a drastic impact on the click-through rate and the conversion rate, which would just then have a knock-on effect on everything else, right? And that's kind of one of the big reasons why we shifted into, okay, let's actually now look at the complete picture as opposed to just one component of the whole platform.
So I heard you say automation, leveraging Amazon Marketing Cloud, and then generative AI as another kind of the three items where you're placing some bets or perhaps investing more time as a
Yeah.
business. Gotcha.
Yeah. And all of this is more to allow those that are working with us to think more about, okay, all of these day-to-day stuff isn't what's important now. It's okay, let's have a look at, okay, what's our market share right now?
Yeah.
How much is our category growing? Who's doing what? Who's succeeding? Why is it working for them? What can we be doing to stay ahead of the game? So these are the kind of conversations we're now having with our clients, and it's a different type of conversation than we were having 2 or 3 years ago when there's like unbelievable growth on Amazon, and like you might be growing 10%, but the market might be growing 40%, right?
Yeah.
So you're not even doing as well as you think you're doing, but now it's not growing the amount it was in the past, and it's about just having a more holistic understanding of what's happening.
As an agency, obviously, it is a people business, and hiring is such a critical part. And you talked about this earlier, which is, it's not always, a slam dunk when you're hiring people. Like, what are you trying to do in terms of continuing to better your hiring process and get the right people in?
This is such a good question, and this is my big passion right now, Sreenath. Like, this is my 5-year goal is to have the smartest people in the world working with us.
Yeah.
Right? I am people first. So you know how Amazon is customer centric? I am people first, right? Who is the right people, right? And so you know how people have budgets for advertising to get new business? We have, time and finance allocated to finding the right people.
Yeah.
So there's two areas. So one is we're constantly just looking. We're just looking for people. So that's the first thing that we're doing. The second thing is an exercise that I've been doing. I think I shared this with you offline the last time we spoke, but every conversation I have with anyone that I think is kind of really on the ball, I keep asking them, who is the most exceptional person that you know?
Sure.
And then what I do is I find them on LinkedIn, and and if they're willing, I jump on the call with them, and I say, look, I would love to know who that is the most exceptional person you've ever worked with.
That's a great strategy.
To get and you'd be surprised. I mean, I've only been doing this for about 3.5 weeks now, but I've got a long list of incredible people. And actually, what's happened is one or two of those people have had 3 other people mention their names. So I'm getting additional data points to tell me, okay, this person is one of the top people.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that I'm thinking now. So I think recruiting, we might have had it backwards. Like you test for competence to start with, and then you get a reference at the end. What if you started with the reference
Yeah.
at the beginning, and then you tested for competence? Because those who I've taken through this process, there's this test that we do. They score way higher than when we do interview process. I'm yet to see someone else from the regular interview process beat the scores on average that I'm seeing from those who come from the referrals.
It's a great strategy, by the way. And it's such a tough process. And it takes so much of your time. I like the inversion where you get some validation up front.
Yeah.
um, this has been a great conversation, George. Like, if there are independent agency owners listening to this conversation, you already have made some suggestions or kind of given some advice. What would those key 1, 2, or 3 learnings, observations, or advice be for these agencies, especially those that are trying to, grow their businesses?
Um, I think it's the people. Um, and this is because I speak to a few agencies, and you have a duty to the people that you have,
Mm.
right? And as an owner and as an agency owner, you have a duty, and this is what keeps me up at night,
Mm.
to innovate and ensure you do not fail. I don't want to be the person that complains because this other agency's adopted a tool and they basically streamlined everything and
Yeah.
they're just basically wiping the floor with me and I die, right?
Yeah.
So my job is, how can we innovate? How can we maintain? Now that's our duty
Mm.
as agency owners, right? So, and this is something that I've taken like really seriously, which is it's resource allocation, right? Where do I put my time? Where should I be putting my time? What are the things that I should not be doing? And this is something I've been working on for like 2 years now. So there's a whole bunch of things that I don't do anymore. Like, I don't even check my emails anymore. Someone does that for me, right?
Mm.
Just so I can think deeply about where is the change that I can make. So really, as an agency owner, really be thinking, okay, what does the next 5 years, 10 years look like for my agency?
Yeah.
And no one else is going to think that. That's your job. And if you're not thinking that, no one else is going to be doing that in the agency. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, um, you obviously have that, but also those on your team need to have a positive attitude to change,
Yeah.
right? When you're introducing new tools and when you're introducing a way to innovate and pivot, if you're getting resistance from a proportion of your team, you have to know when to let go,
Mm.
right? Because
Mm.
it is not fair on the other people on the team
Yeah.
who are willing to innovate and willing to change and willing to advance
Yeah.
for the greater good, right?
Yeah.
And this is, I think, the biggest thing I've noticed amongst a number of agencies. And I make it my duty. I'm always speaking to agency owners. I'm always trying to figure out, what are your pain points? What are you going through? How are things going? And it's people.
Yes.
So yeah.
The the earlier point you made about freeing up time, uh, Intentwise used to be a Google AdWords agency when we first started, and I remember back then the hardest challenge was, how do you get away from being under the operational weight of the business all the time? Because if you don't, there's no personal growth and there's no company growth, and that is one of the hardest challenges, I think, which sounds like is a big focus for you. um, so you can think, the working on the business versus in the business. uh,
Yeah.
Super helpful. Any specific topic that we did not cover, George, and we should have?
That's a good question.
And I also love the strategy of, you asked me this question last time and I gave you a name, but asking people, who should I talk to next?
Yeah, yeah. So is there anything that we should have covered that we haven't spoken about today? I mean, I think the big thing on my mind right now is I'm obsessing about people and finding the
Yeah.
right people and
Yeah.
finding people who are a lot more intelligent than I am to help me take this further than I can ever take it. Um, so there's that. I can't think of anything at the moment in terms of
Yeah.
anything that we haven't covered. And you asked me the question, who is like some of the greatest minds and people I've spoken to?
Yeah.
This is going to sound like funny me saying this, but it's actually someone who I now work with, which is Matt Altman. I've not been blown away by anyone like him in the space just yet.
Mm.
And it's really funny because the way we got to know each other is, I met him at an event And then I invited him to one of our events, and then we built a relationship over a few years. And then I asked the big question, would you be willing to come over to our little agency compared to the huge, colossal agency he was at? And to my surprise, he said yes, and he came on board. So, and that's been phenomenal. And I'm still hunting to find others because I've seen someone who's so exceptional and thinks at such a different pace to anyone I've ever met,
Yeah.
trying to keep up and then falling down hard.
Yeah.
But having that as a drive,
Yeah.
I'm addicted to that, and I want more of that, and I'm trying to find others that can match or surpass that level of intelligence. And I think that's the easiest thing. Now, there's just one structure that we have as gospel at the business, and this has really helped us free up time. Serene, so if you don't mind, I'll just share that because in terms of
Yes.
I think this could be quite helpful for agencies. So I have a structure of meetings that I do, and my team are going to be like, oh, talking about this again. But we have these weekly meetings, and they're called line meetings. So what we do is with every single person in the team, you look at last week. What did you do last week? What issues have you seen? Right. So they become the eyes for the business. Well, what issues are you seeing that I don't see?
Yep.
What opportunity? And then the third is opportunities. What opportunities do you see that I don't see? And then with the issues and opportunities that you've mentioned, what are you going to do about it for the next
Yeah.
week, right? And giving them ownership to go and do something about it. And everyone goes through those meetings.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate enough, I only have to have 3 or 4 of those meetings a week. And I know everything that's going on in the business that I need to know about.
It's great.
So that's been phenomenal for me to then be able to allocate the resources that I need to the right places.
Got you. Well, George, this has been a fantastic conversation. Lots to learn from. I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate all the conversations we have had over the last couple of years, and also the partnership we have between Clear Ads and Intentwise.
Yeah.
So thank you so much again. And,
No, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure speaking to you, and thank you for all the awesome content you put out and have been putting out. And I look forward to just seeing where the advancements go with AMC from your lens as well, because I know you got a good relationship with Amazon.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Cool.